Kia ora everybody. Got a message the other day from one of our most successful podcasts from last year, Gwyn Thurlow. He said, you need to talk to this guy, Tim. He got out of a Tahr block. You got some cracking hits, was that right?
Oh yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I mean they're probably unusual heads really, but no, it was good. We got 4 good bulls, and yeah, it was cool.
So before we get into that, because obviously you basically had to evacuate. Tell us how you met Gwyn. I think he might have mentioned your name. Are you who strong-armed him into becoming part of the Heritage Trust?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, no, he came along to a Wellington branch meeting a few years ago, and I'd sort of been doing a bit of work, getting to know the Heritage Trust guys, and then I sort of started their Facebook page. After me and my dad sort of bought quite a significant rifle. He bought the Viv Donald rifle that shot the first licensed wapiti in New Zealand.
Wow.
That was sort of the catalyst for me to go, and I'd always thought about it, why don't we have a museum for hunting? And I sort of got to the bottom of going, well, has anybody been doing anything along those lines? And I got directed through my local club to the National Heritage Trust and got to know those guys. And really seeing what they'd sort of done with their collection, if they had any plans, all that kind of stuff. And it turns out they did have some plans. They were sort of way off in the future, but just got involved and started trying to make things happen. And then Gwyn came along, and I thought, well, here's a guy who's keen on history, keen on deer stalking. And he's a younger guy who can do the whole technology thing as well, whereas some of the other guys on the trust are a bit of the older set, so they've got their strengths and we've got ours. So yeah, I got him along, and yeah, rest is history at the moment. It's good.
Bloody awesome. I don't know if it's come on your radar yet, but the Educated Hunter, they recorded this a wee while ago, but they had Chris McCarthy from Lake Hawea Hunting Safaris on, who of course has created a book around the Otago heads that they've got on the property that he hunts on. And I think he's proposed it to the Game Animal Council as well, is that we should have the heritage of our little herds around the place. He went in so deep as, most of the liberations come from separate places. And when you look at the genetics, you can probably find, the base of those liberations in the quality of the heads. How much sort of stock information have you guys got around that sort of avenue?
Oh, there's certainly. I mean, the guys like John Forbes back in the day did a huge amount of work identifying where these herds were from, and put that into the New Zealand Deer Head series. Bruce Bannell was another historic guy who did huge amounts of writing and sussing out where all these herds came from. So I mean, what we've got in the trust is a lot of Bruce's stuff was gifted to the Heritage Trust after he passed on, and so we've got a lot of his original photos, and he just spent a whole lifetime of just gathering photos and stories from guys who'd shot some of these amazing heads and knew the history of the herd. So his Red Deer series was published through the New Zealand Deer Stalkers Association, and so those books detail where all the herds from you got Taupo Liberations, Wairarapa, a very old one. Nelson's probably the oldest in the country, and then right down into the Rakai and the Poulter and then down into Otago and whatnot. So we've certainly got huge amounts of records there. Heaps of photos that you just haven't seen before, and I guess that was sort of part of what I would do with the Facebook page is I'd go along to the Heritage Trust every Friday initially, and I'd take photos just on my phone, photocopies, and then I'd post them up on Facebook. I've slowed down a bit now because we've got all our stuff in storage, and it's because we've got this big museum project going on now in Wellington, where we're really going to be trying to showcase the best of everything of what we have in the collection, on the walls, in a place where people can actually see it for a change, rather than being some tucked away in some office space where nobody really has access to sort of see it unless they're like ingratiated with the team, you know. So that was sort of our dream, was to sort of get, and the guys originally started the Heritage Trust, that was their dream as well, was to get the stuff out in front of the public. Because I guess on a bit of a higher level, you know, if we're not showing the public that we hold all our treasures dear, and we don't have a national place where we have this stuff on display, you know, then we're just another little sport, you know, that has a few followers or whatever, and it's not really competing on the national stage like some of these other big museums like Tahr and all that kind of stuff. So Wellington's known as a bit of a museum hub. So we've got some support from initial support from the Wellington City Council and stuff. So it's going to be good to sort of, you know, build the museum and build it up, and it's going to take some time. That's for sure. We're still in the early stages. We're completing the building now. It was slated to finish before this lockdown. We were slated to finish in June or July. So, you know, there'll be another 2-year project getting all the stuff displayed in the museum after that.
Absolutely. And people that have the Hunter's Journal or a couple of the, you know, recent NZ Hunter magazines, they can flick through the pages and find a little bit more information. I think before I talked to Gwen, like you say, it was sort of slated to be end of last year, start of this year. But so where's the point that you're at? Obviously, it's a open-ended question now as to when, but where are you up to? I guess is the main thing. Where are we up to?
So the scope of it was an existing old townhouse in Wellington, in the middle of Wellington, and we've pretty much doubled the size of it, doubled the footprint. It's 2-story, and right now we're at sort of post-line stage. So they've done the pre-line, done the post-line, put all the linings up, all the hardware's going on, the doors going on, etc. So it's really up to sort of plastering and painting stage, with all the nice fit out stuff going in, like all the kit. We've got a kitchen going in there, and all the toilet fittings and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's really coming down to the nitty gritty now, which has been cool to see the whole thing take shape.
Okay, so as you said there, you know, it's important to tell the story so that we're just not some little niche to the side that those hunters. You know, we've got a significant place and heritage and story to tell. For you, what does, for me, a sort of pride in the fact in the story and knowing where everything's come from. For you, what's, like you said, you got that Donald rifle. What sort of scratches your itch?
Yeah. What scratches my itch is old. I love old rifles. I just think they're fantastic. That's probably where it started for me. Was my dad was a bit of a collector, and then we would go to the anti-gun auctions and go look at rifles. You know, there'd be like these weekend-long auctions, and I just go around browsing and picking up everything that I could, and learning as much about rifles as I could. And then when you pick up like an old stalking rifle, you can pick up a really nice rifle when it's immaculate, you know, right? But it doesn't look like it's got any stories attached to it, you know. It's just been sitting in a cupboard, you know. I love bruised wood. I love, you know, bluing worn off. I love scopes, that aluminium scopes, all the paint worn off it. They just tell a story for me. And that's really where it started for me, along with just reading. I mean, my mum used to get me all the old deer stalking books from the library back when things were not digital. And I would just, as a young fella, I'd just pore over these books from all these old authors, you know, and read about all these amazing animals in the hills. And that's sort of the other side of our collection is a library. You know, there's well over 2,000 books in there, and John Riley's our very capable library curator. And he does a fantastic job of sourcing new books and sourcing some of the older, harder ones to find. So that's the other part of the museum, is you're going to be able to go into the library and see some of these titles that you've never seen before.
And so are they sort of going to be collectors' pieces that are first edition stuff, or just the content themselves?
Yeah, we try and get first editions where we can. As far as we've got some pretty rare stuff in there. I can't really list them off because books aren't my specialty, but I know there's some books in there that are like worth thousands of dollars. So and then there's other stuff like the photo albums. Like for instance, there's the Herrick's photo albums in there from when they were shooting moose and that. And there's like pictures in there of like the moose down on the ground that you've seen in other magazines, but then there's photos in there that haven't been seen. For instance, like there's one where they've created, ladders to climb up really hard, inaccessible parts of these, fjordland, creeks, and they've hand built these ladders to try and get up, and I hadn't seen that in other books when I came across those photos. So, some real special stuff.
Yeah, for me, rocking up to Hastings Deerstalkers and seeing the heads on the wall, and then seeing the name, the Blue River, and then the Herricks, I was just like, golly, there was none of that when I visited Blue River. Like you said about seeing the bruised and battered rifles. Is it enchantment? Like for me, seeing that head on the wall, going, holy cow! I've been into that place. Man, what I hope it was in the basin, because it is magical.
Yeah. I think it's just seeing some of these names in print. For me, it's seeing names in print and some of these faces, and then, for instance, like a bit like yourself going to the Blue River, I went into the Hunter Valley a couple of years ago with my mate Rick, and we walked out of that, and we walked all the way to Dingleburn Station, which is where you were talking about before. And on the way, we dropped into Green Bush Hut, and it was incredible. Like the Forbes, sorry, not Forbes. What's his name? Prince of Guides, Jim Muir. His name was written in. Well, it was scrawled on the sarking on the roof has got some black paper on it, right? And what he's done is he's grabbed a piece of coal out of the fire and scrawled his name up on that building paper, and then again it's written on the outside of the hut in pencil, saying, with a list of all the shepherds who did the 1946-47 season, and here he is down the bottom. He's the packer. So he's packed in all their gear, probably, this is probably after his guiding career is sort of coming to its end. And unfortunately, he died not long after that from cancer, I believe. But, just seeing, those names in there. And then I think, if you go to the bottom of the Landsborough, there was a hut there for years and years that had the Rangers hut that had the names of all the colours in there. And then from all those famous early stalkers that passed through that hut on their way up the Landsborough, so the stories are out there in our backcountry. If you got the time to research them and get into it, then here you are. You're walking in the footsteps of history. It's cool.
Yeah, I had a special moment like that over New Year's. We got privy to a bivvy that's in the Kawakas. And, that only goes back 50 years. But modern day sort of, people, see the Dooley's names written in there, only about 5 years ago. But it's just like, there's a piece of history. I'm in the same spot as these people. And of course, the namesake of this biv, there's these hilarious articles, because someone's gone and photocopied the original hut book, and it sits in there, and there's all this bickering going on between entries in the hut book. It's quite hilarious.
Nice. That's very cool. Cool. Yeah, I mean, even on this hunt we've just come out on, after I came out, I said to John Riley, our librarian, we'd been up into the Karangarua. And I remember he said he'd been up into the Troit back in the day, and he actually fished out all the photographs of him in the Troit in 1965 with Dave Atkins and another guy, and they went up and shot Shemi and Tahr and Reds up in there, and so it was cool seeing his photos, and a lot of his photos are matching the photos that I've taken, you know. So you know, here we are, like tens of years apart, and doing the same stuff. It's very cool.
That's fantastic. I was talking with Toby Hines. He's an Australian hunter from the northern New South Wales Hunter Valley, or mid New South Wales Hunter Valley, and he was saying how the either Deer Australia or Bow Hunting Australia magazines at 100 issues is shut down, and he said that it appeared to be the lack of hunters willing to put pen to paper and match it with photos, and you know, he sort of thinks, well, maybe it's this Instagram age or YouTube age where we're now recording it via video. What's the capacity for you? You know, you're obviously the heritage of New Zealand hunting, but what happens today is the heritage of the future. What sort of capacity do you guys have to continue to document hunts?
Yeah, I mean, it's another sort of, we haven't got, to be perfectly honest, we don't have anything at the moment. We rely on what people give us for a lot of it. What we do plan to do is get some reasonably big servers in. We've got like a capacity for that in the new building, where we can actually start storing digital stuff. And at this stage, because at this stage we'd like to digitize what we do have so that people can access it. I think a big part of like history living on is that, you know, it actually gets into a place where a lot of people can access it and get hold of it. So you know, we will be relying on people giving stuff. We take copies of all the magazines that get published every month, so it just keeps getting added into the library. So there's one record of hunts that are going on. But yeah, I suppose, you know, with the comment about, you know, people, you're not recording and that, I mean, I do know that, you know, Instagram has definitely made it easier to sort of show what you've been up to and what you're doing. I suppose where it falls down a little bit is that it doesn't tell the whole story in some ways. And hunters can be a secretive bunch a lot of the time, because we don't want people coming in and just knocking off all our animals and our spots, you know. But I think there's got to be a bit of realization sometimes that, you know, what's more important, you know, telling the stories of the way we do things and how we do it, or just keeping it all to ourselves, you know. I certainly want my boys growing up continuing to grow up in an environment where hunting is sort of on the forefront of sport in New Zealand and is acceptable, you know.
And I guess that's where New Zealand Deer Stalkers Association is sort of blossoming again. We've sort of had some threats to our longevity, and it's sort of created a renaissance of hunting clubs. So yeah, I hear good things from Gwyn of Wellington. What's been your sort of perspective of it, and what's been your journey with NZDA?
So I mean, I think clubs are only as strong as the people that are in them and how much they're prepared to give back. If you're going to a club to sort of just take all the time, then you don't find you get much out of them. And so if you're there and you're there to give back and help people, then you find you get a lot more enjoyment out of clubs. I think the NZDA model probably will have to change a little bit, in my personal opinion. I think it needs to change to sort of more of a direct style of membership, and we've got that function there. We've never really pushed it. We need more people to join, because we do see clubs around the country. Clubs in some ways are, you know, they are a product of the past in some ways. But I mean, if you've got a strong club, it's because there's people that are passionate in there to sort of keep things moving and keep things positive, and having up-to-date information, so people want to come to club night. For instance, like we have a membership of well over 200 people, but we might only have, you know, 20 or 30 people turn up to club night. We've been able to turn that around, and now we're getting up into the 30s, 40s, you know. But again, at the end of the day, people live busy lives, you know. And I think they don't always have time for a club, but they'll still want to be able to join something and be able to support their sport in a way. And I think, that's probably, for the longevity of NZDA, we need to probably move to a bit more of a direct style of membership, just so everybody can feel like they can be involved and get involved, on whatever level they choose.
And I think that sort of speaks a bit like having the museum speaks to the significance of the sport being a member of a club, any club, or a membership organisation when it comes to who are the hunters in New Zealand. Well, here's a list of various clubs around the country with names on paper, and that's when it comes to the politics of all this, if there's a fair chunk of the country that could change their mind about who they're voting for, people will, one, temper their decision, and also, two, are more likely to consult the body. And of course, that's Game Animal Council, and to a lesser, but definitely not less significant, to a lesser extent, the NZDA. Right there on the firearms consultation. So having a large amount of people means that we do have significance, and then we can point to here's the history, which is the fantastic thing that you guys are doing. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, you can't deny that we still, we've got quite a significant size of amount of people in the association. And I think it was sort of floated to us the other day. Why don't we become a political party? Like we became if we politicised our members, we'd be the third largest party in New Zealand politics right now. So that's not insignificant. That's and if we're all singing from the same song sheet, we've got some real power to be able to change things in New Zealand. And they need changing at the moment, that's for sure.
I guess the flip side of that is when you start getting political, everyone seems to have an opinion. What's sort of been the challenge of sticking your neck out as a trust on the side of NZDA? I'm sure you're getting lots of advice without much action. How do you sort of create a bubble, to use the term that we're familiar with right now, around the Heritage Trust, so that it is the doers and not the shit slingers, I'd probably call them, that are coming in from the side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I mean, from an internal NZDA perspective, it's about maintaining close links with NATEX. I'm on NATEX at the moment, so we couldn't
Who's
get much
NATEX,
closer
sorry?
at the moment. Oh, sorry. So that's the national executive of NZDA.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of making sure we're not going at cross purposes, and saying something over here when we should be saying this or whatever. As far as staying relevant, I think it's interesting. The TV shows have been very good lately. Sort of really, showing hunters how they should hunt, what ethics they should have. Because it's getting to people on a level where you're not having to read it in a magazine. And let's be honest, hunters aren't the most book savvy sort of people. So we may we may read or we may not. So TV's been really good to sort of gone beyond sort of just the drive up on a quad bike and shoot something. You got the dealies and then the hunters club guys, going into some really, tough to get at places. Yeah, they're on the extreme level of hunting, but the way they harvest meat, the way they harvest trophies, and what they're looking for as far as trophies are concerned it's just awesome. It's all the ethics my dad taught me, when I was growing up, and it's really good for letting everybody know this is the way you should hunt, and these are the ethics that you should use. So.
And I think also with the storytelling side of things, we're also starting to get on the sort of opinion news side of things. So not on the main news show unless it's newsworthy like culling Tahr, but I absolutely loved the two mums from Opotiki and their
on the seven sharp, so to speak.
Yeah, that was and having someone like Jeremy Wells there who's not afraid to stick his neck out there on the chopping block is rather fortuitous, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the amount of people popping up on social media is catching the eye of some of these news crowds, because they're actually realising, because there's always been that historic disconnect between city dwellers and rural, you know. I think your rural people are far more into your hunting. And a lot of the kids who've moved to the city know that their parents did that, and their cousins might still do that back in Gisborne or whatever, you know. But I think, certainly the control of the media is well entrenched in the cities, you know. So for them to sort of see that, there's a good portion of New Zealanders who actually get up to this stuff in the backcountry, it's healthy, keeps people grounded, and it keeps people connected back to how New Zealand was founded back in the day. People eking out an existence in the bush. That's sort of what hunters are doing on a daily basis with just everything on their back. So yeah, it's healthy for people, I reckon, to get a bit of a reality check about hunting in New Zealand.
Yeah, and rugby's a big part of this country, and there's people like Liam Squire and Tim Perry chasing pigs, and Sam Kane, Tony Woodcock, guys chasing deer. I saw with the North Harbour boys went and harvested a couple of fallow this last season. I know the Southland rugby team, every pre-season they go out for a hunt, and I know the Highlanders do the same. So it's it is part of the country, and if we can instill a bit of pride and a bit of a place to hang our hat on, like a heritage museum, I just think it's a positive for that acceptance of what is really a massive way of life, and you wouldn't have a museum if there wasn't heritage there. It's massive, and
absolutely.
The I think it was 2 articles ago in what are they called, Guns and Hunting or Hunting and Shooting magazine. They had the Deans brothers. Riccarton House there in the middle of Christchurch is the homestead of the Deans. Robbie Deans is a descendant of them. Just to have a familiar name and a familiar heritage that goes right back to the founding of Christchurch. It just, people do need to be aware of this sort of stuff. That hey, it's in the blood of New Zealand, and
it is.
That was the thing that Chris was talking about, that people were coming out from Scotland on the boat to come hunt their stags in New Zealand in the mountainous country. It's pretty remarkable.
Oh, it is. Yeah, they identified pretty early on that our heads were far better than what they were getting back in the homeland. So, they were all coming out. And a lot of them were very successful when they did come out, So, I mean, it made, sort of through the 20s and 30s, with Lord Latimer coming out, he got himself a huge bag, Captain Carillon, he got himself like 612s, just insane amounts of good animals coming out, and really back in the day, really cementing New Zealand as a place to go and hunt big animals, big game animals. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Nice. Right, so let's get into it. Tell us about the Tahr hunt you've just been on, and I don't know if you've seen the NZ Hunters Club guys and their sort of experience in getting messages on the inReach and helicopters flying over and into areas that helicopters usually aren't allowed to land. What was yours like?
Yeah. So we went in on Sunday, and there was a fair bit of conjecture then, like, would we be facing a lockdown when we came out? And from my perspective, I couldn't get into the bush quick enough.
Yeah.
In some ways, I was like, I've got to get something in before this all turns to custard. So we got in anyway. I think it was under level 2. Couldn't actually, and then when we got in, it must have been about, we started
Monday.
Getting our first inReach messages sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, and they were saying things like, "Oh, it's gone to level 3," and then the next one was like level 4, and we were kind of scratching our heads, going, "Oh, what did level 4 mean?" We sort of hadn't paid too much attention, to be honest. But then it was they were sort of saying, "Oh, it's complete lockdown. You can't leave your house, blah blah blah, and you can't drive anywhere, and you guys are going to struggle to get back over the Cook Strait," because I'm from Wellington, and my mate Rick's from Wellington too. So he had his truck down. He was like, I don't know if my truck might be staying in the South Island for a while. So anyway, we sort of thought to ourselves when we started hearing these messages on sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, we were like, well, if we come out now, if we ring up, we'll just drive north and we'll be sitting at the ferry terminal with probably 1,000 other people trying to get on the ferry, and we probably won't get on. So we're like, well, we might as well finish our hunt, because if we come out, we're going to have to stay put anyway, you know.
How'd you get in there to begin with?
Oh, we flew in with James Scott. So
Right.
yeah, it was a pretty quick flight in. We went up the Karangarua. I'm not afraid to say where we went. It's all good. Pretty popular Tahr hunting spot. And so yeah, I guess, you know, we stayed at a few of the huts in the Karangarua, and we just slowly walked our way out over 2 days from where we were. We went up high into the Alpine early on in the trip. Ricky shot his first Tahr bull after like a few years of trying to get one. And then we went up into the Alpine. I managed to get a 12-inch bull, which I was pretty happy with. That was cool. Came back down, sort of started getting the messages, and then started walking out, and got to Castle Flat, and man, so much sign on Castle Flat, deer crap everywhere, like it just looks like a sheep paddock, you know. But it was quite cool. We went for a morning stalk on the way out, and we it was quite funny, really. I'd just given Rick the rifle because I'd sort of done one clearing, and then he could do the next clearing, you know. And I said, "Oh, you go next," you know. And we just popped out onto beside the river, and we're looking over the river towards where Regina Creek comes in, and there's this bull Tahr just eating some shrubs right underneath the cableway that goes across to the Regina. And so Rick quickly gets, trying to be quiet, you know, and Rick gets his camera out, you know, and we zoom right in. It's got one of those 80 times zoom lenses, you know, so you can really assess whether these things are good or not, you know. And earlier on in the trip, it was real funny actually. Earlier on in the trip, on one of the clearings, Rick said, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot out just before it goes dark. I'm gonna go out to this clearing. I'm gonna see if there's anything out there." Anyway, he was just gonna try and take some photos of anything that came out, but he took his gun. And anyway, this 12-inch bull just popped out of the scrub, and he was like, "Oh, this looks pretty big." So he like lined it up and he shot it, and it just turned out that he'd made the right call, and it was 12 inches. Had a split-second decision to make, but it had one horn. When it finally stopped and ran and died, you know, he comes over to it, and it's got one horn busted off, and it looked like a bullet had gone right through the busted off horn and exploded on the other side of on the other horn, because there's a big sort of impact on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's maybe how he lost it. Anyway, so I'm back down at Castles a couple of days later, and he's looking through his camera, and he goes, "That's a big bull, but he's got one horn." So the second bull with you know, just one horn, you know. And he's like, "Oh, I won't shoot it because I you know, I've got a one horn bull already." And I said, I don't have one. So he gave me the rifle back.
A couple of unicorns.
A couple of unicorns there, right? And then so we cranked ourselves over on the cableway, picked up the bull, and brought him back. And that was the last animal we shot on the way out. So it was pretty cool, to be honest. We're pretty stoked to get a one-horn bull. It sort of speaks to the character of the West Coast bulls, who typically they're a lot harder on their horns than some of their East Coast counterparts with broomed. Like, for instance, my 12-inch bull from up in the Alpine, he broomed half an inch off his other side, so he's 11 and a half on one, 12 on the other. And I'd shot one in the past, like a 13-inch bull, and he broomed a whole inch off, you know. So they really abuse their horns on the West Coast, and I suppose some of that wet environment, you know, they're always damaging them. So that was cool to come out with a couple of real battlers, you know.
Absolutely. And so, you know, what are we now? 3 or 4 months on from when? Probably not even that. Only about 2 months on from when the 10,000 Tahr were culled. What did you sort of? Had you been in there before? What did you sort of notice?
Um, to be honest, I don't think they ended up culling a huge amount on the west coast.
Yeah.
I'm not deeply entrenched in the Tahr, um, the the TIG or the NZDA Foundation. I sort of helped them out with a bit of their social media stuff with Snow Hewitson being on the NZDA executive as well. But from what I understand, I don't think too much culling went up on the west coast. And the numbers that we were seeing were still very. There were plenty in there. I wasn't seeing a lot of damage though, not a lot of vegetation damage, which was pleasing. And certainly in some places on the west coast, like I've been in the Landsborough, top end of the Landsborough, and then up in the Wanganui, up near in from Harry, and the some of the vegetation damage in there. Yeah, you can tell that the mobs might be getting too big in there, and they need thinning out so that the environment can sustain better animals and grow better horns. To be honest, so I don't think it's the animal numbers where we were in the Karangarua seemed about right to me. I wasn't seeing a lot of vegetation abuse, but yeah, that was just my gut feel.
No, that's really cool. And so, from your perspective, what was it like trying to mentor someone through communicating the efforts of the Tahr Foundation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm sort of a bit of a conduit, I suppose. I'm not really, probably the brains trust behind Tahr media releases, but yeah, I guess anybody who I come across when we talk about the Tahr issue, um, the things I tend to focus on is that animals need to be managed. They do need to be managed. If they're out of control in some places, they need to be culled back. I guess what the issue with the current Tahr management plan is, it hasn't been reviewed, and it was always supposed to have been reviewed. And new totals of animals come up with, for a manageable population, and it just hasn't happened because it hasn't been DOC's focus, and then all of a sudden they get like Forest and Bird or some of these other organisations coming along saying they're damaging, the hills, and the tussocks and all this kind of stuff. And we've got to. I mean, they've got to come up with a decent management plan that doesn't just involve helicopter shooting or or culling operations or whatever. It's got to involve everybody who has a part to play, because there's the one constant is recreational hunting. We're always going to be here. We're the biggest users of the backcountry, and we're always going to have a part to play culling animals. So we need to be listened to. And I think really the Tahr Foundation are doing a great job of bringing a lot of these management principles to the table, and DOC need to start engaging with them and listening to them really, along with the GAC and the NZDA.
So obviously there's been a bit of whirlwind, and we'll get back to the whirlwindness. Have you been able to get those 4 animals onto the Tahr app yet?
The Tahr app, I do have it on my phone. I haven't been able to get it on yet. I've just finished doing, yesterday I finished doing the Kia sightings. So there was some Kia up there. So I've done them on, so they've got an app as well. And so I've just finished doing those, which is cool. So yeah, the Tahr will be going on the Tahr app after this. So it's good. You've got to be able to show how you're contributing, and these new apps are part of doing that. So
absolutely, yeah. And as you were saying about continuing to communicate management, the Tahr Foundation had a really great post yesterday going on about what they've been doing about the ballot system, and going back to Toby, he was unsure whether or not he was going to get out here. His ballot's not till June, but the Tahr Foundation was also very conscious of the fact that there's going to be plenty of Kiwis now that aren't going to have the budgets anymore or the abilities to go anymore, and so working around that. So it was really awesome to hear them openly communicate that, hey, we've been talking with Doc, meeting with Doc, got put to the side. You know, these are the things that we're considering. So as a hunter population, and you know, I'm by no means a Tahr hunter at this point in time, but you know, it's the reason why I'm so sort of intrigued about it, because it's definitely on my radar. It's really cool to have someone openly communicate, and you know, that follows on with what Wapiti Foundation are doing and Seeker Foundation are doing. It's really awesome that we've got these organisations, despite not being categorised as special interest herds, they're sort of acting like that is the case, and working towards a management structure, and communicating that to us, so we go out on the hill and know what's sort of a general unwritten expectation, or it is written now, expectation of how we go about things. Is that sort of the same for you guys with both the NZDA executive and following into the story behind our deer species and hunting species?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it, like you say, is communication, just getting the story out there. There are management principles to use when you're hunting. I think we're sort of a little bit hamstrung in some ways by, so the NZDA, the national executive, is sort of 8 guys, and we're all passionate guys, but we all hold full-time jobs, and a lot of what gets put out by the NZDA has to come from those 8 people. We're very fortunate to have Caitlin Pinney come on. She's got a very good scientific background, so she was co-opted on a couple of months back, to sort of for her ability to sort of, you know, bring a scientific background to the table, which is cool. So she's been sort of helping craft a lot of the stuff that goes out on Tahr Foundation anyway, if we're talking about Tahr. As far as, you know, what's quite exciting is you would have seen Gwen's been announced as the CEO for NZDA. And really that's going to probably turn around the effectiveness and the amount of stuff we're going to be able to put out. He's going to have the time to create and do proper news releases about all the current relative issues, and that's sort of really what we haven't had to date. We've had 2 people working in the office, and they're just sort of busy helping maintain membership records and the functions of you know, just keeping the NZDA going as an entity. Whereas Gwyn's going to be able to like bring a you know, he's going to be able to bring, you know, all his you know, hunting ethics. He's got great ethics. He's got huge work ethic in itself. Like the guy doesn't switch off, you know, in some ways. So we're going to have to look after him in that respect, you know. So, but you know, he's going to be able to put in the time, not only for the NZDA but for Heritage Trust as well. So it's going to be exciting. Exciting times coming up. I've had very good support. You know, coming on to the national executive, you know, I was sort of earmarked as sort of doing a lot of the social media stuff when I came on board. I've had excellent support from Sharon Simmons from the Southern Lakes branch. Gwen's been on the team, sort of posting stuff up, and but it's extremely, what you find out is it's extremely draining. Having to write stuff all the time and be quite articulate and careful with what you're saying, so you don't end up stirring up all sides of the pot. And yeah, no, it's been a big learning curve for me. But I tell you what, I'm coming off Natex at the end of this in July, and it's been a great, it's been a really great experience. But I'm looking forward to having a bit of a break and supporting from the sidelines, rather than being at the forefront of some of this other stuff. So it's hard when you got a young family. You know, you got a young family, 2 young boys, and wife saying, "Oh, it's about time you spend some time. You know, get off that NZDA call." You know, so yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I know. Growing up, my old man involved with rowing is with national executives and stuff, and there'd be conference calls and you know, local club meetings and regional meetings and stuff will rock up to our house. You're right. You can end up down rabbit holes, but it's definitely enriching the environment. And you brought up Gwyn's. It just was announced the other day that he's CEO of NZDA. So we're going to have a chat to him from his perspective and what he's seen, and also all the things that he's done in terms of presenting to the select committee on firearms. Yeah, so that's going to be bloody exciting. His first episode was a hit, so I'm sure people would love to hear from him again. Going back to your hunt and your trip, so you walked out of there. What was it like reaching the car and driving? You were in isolation already. What was it like driving through simulated isolation?
So the first thing we did, we got out as we crossed the Karangarua Road bridge, and I was like, it's really weird. We haven't seen a car, or heard any cars. And
what day was this?
This was Friday.
Right.
So we'd come out a day early, managed to walk out a day early, and we were like I said earlier, we had an inkling of what lockdown meant, but we sort of had it because of the inReach. We weren't sending huge amounts of messages back and forth, but it still hadn't really twigged for us that there wouldn't be anybody around at all, And we got to Franz Joseph, and there was nobody in the car park, and also, when we got to the car, there was nobody in the car park, and then on the first thing we saw was a sign on the gate saying, no, you can't go up to Welcome Flat, because that's sort of in the same area. You can go up to Copeland and go to Welcome Flat Hut, which is a hugely popular tourist destination. So that was off limits. So we're like, this must be reasonably serious if they're starting to close backcountry huts now. Mm-hmm. And so we drove north to Franz Joseph, to Fox Glacier. There was virtually nobody in Fox Glacier. Everything was closed. And then we stopped there and just started ringing around, and then you start sort of seeing people just walking around with their dog, and you go, they must be exercising, and you sort of see people crossing paths, like maintaining their 2 meters, like this. And it all looks quite weird. And we got to Franz Joseph, and the Four Square was open, thank goodness, because I was real hungry. I think I bought a punnet of ice cream and ate half of it when I got out. Scoffing down pies, needed some sustenance,
Heavy packing.
So we got a feed, and then we sort of thought, what would have happened is we rang our wives, and my wife, she's very capable, and she'd actually, so Gwyn had found out about his ferry ride that had been cancelled, but he also found out what you would need to come back across if you were stuck in the South Island. So he relayed that to Sarah, and so Sarah put that all into a letter. And so me and Ricky, we both work for the City Council. We're builders by trade, but we're a part of the building inspection management team. Mm-hmm. And we were just fortunate that that's been listed as one of the essential services. So they really needed
loopholes.
Managers back in Wellington, So
yeah.
So we were fortunate enough to get this letter, and it was signed, and we were able to come back across on the Bluebridge Freight Ferry. So we were very, very fortunate. I mean, I heard from one of my mates, they were hunting in South Canterbury. His mate got the willies, and they drove up early, got to the ferry, sat there for, I think it was Blenheim Airport, left their truck at Blenheim Airport, and had to fly across once they got a flight that was cancelled after somebody else didn't turn up. So we were fortunate to get across the way we did, and get back home after having such an awesome trip. So we were very blessed, to be honest.
Yeah, at the end of that NZ Hunter, Hunters Club, sorry, I did wonder where Dave Shaw ended up, because I'm pretty sure he's from up north.
Yeah, it was quite funny. As we were driving north, we got pulled over by the cops.
Right, yeah, how did that go?
We were like, it was like, where are you guys going? And we're like, we just came out of the bush, And he said, we said, look, we're essential services, so we've been asked to come back. And he goes, look, I can't tell you to keep going, but good luck, So he was good enough to let us go, and we got back to the ferry, and we didn't spread our germs on the way up. When we were pretty confident after being in the bush and having a few wet days that we didn't have anything, we weren't carrying anything dodgy, so
Yeah.
We were just fortunate to get back.
And was there any word that James might have flown in and picked you up, or was that ever an option?
It probably was, probably earlier on, but we were still trying to figure out what level 3 meant
3 and 4
versus
meant.
level 4, because it went to level 3, and we were like, what did level 3 mean again? And then I think, the next day we got another message through that said it was level 4, and what I heard is that with level 4, no helicopters can fly, and so we were like, oh, well, that's that. We're going to be walking out. We were walking out. That was always the plan, was to walk out and see the whole valley. But by the time we got there, level 4, we were under the impression that there was no flights to be had. So we were just like, oh, well, so be it. We'll just deal with it as it comes, really.
Yeah, even for us at work, I'm an optometrist, so we sort of, working away on the Monday, oh, it's level 3, and 24 hours it's level 4, and we're kind of like, only essential businesses are open. And we're like, well, where does that leave us? And it took another, I think, day. Yeah, I think it wasn't until the Tuesday that it was kind of like, no, you guys aren't. And then it was kind of like, yes, seeing people in that time that, were over 70 and over 80, and I was just sort of getting to the stage where I was like, why did you decide that you needed to go get your eyes tested today? And nobody had a good reason. I don't know whether it was they had lived a good life and they weren't worried about it, or just because it happened so quickly. And some people could argue that it should have happened quicker than it did, but happened so quickly that it went from 2, 3, 4. No one really understood what it all meant. Like, say you're in the middle of the bush going, it's level 3. You're like, well, what on earth does that mean?
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing too is you're sort of in the best place. You're sort of feeling at the time that you're in the best place anyway. You can't get any more self-isolated apart from you and your mate in the hills. At the end of the day, we were loving it. We were enjoying ourselves. We were kind of like, oh, well, the world will go to hell in a handbasket over here. We'll just be in the hills hunting tahr, But in some ways you look back and go, oh, maybe that was irresponsible. But I think too, you're in that frame of mind where, especially when you just, when you've been looking forward to it for 6 months, like a lot of my trips get planned for 6 months, and you sort of go, well, I'm here and I'm going to make the best of it. And certainly the messaging that we were getting, we were like, well, we're stuck anywhere. We're 3/4 of the way down the South Island. We've got a vehicle that we've got to take back. We weren't flying back, so it was we were sort of stuck as it was, and it was only by we certainly didn't think we were going to be on essential services, that's for sure, until the wife rang up and said, oh, I've got you a letter, I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I guess for the people that have never done an expedition hunt, it's almost takes a real flick of a switch to get into that mindset of, hey, I'm going to go and survive out there with what's on my back. And when that's sort of the call, I can very easily understand why, and it came across really well in the Hunters Club episode, that when you're out there, it's like, right, well, I'm going to do this. So, you're already all the way there as it is. so to just say, do it a bit longer, and I guess that's when you do go out on an expedition, and even an overnight or a weekend hunt, you can always going out there with the theory that, hey, it could be longer than what I expect. I can definitely relate to why it was a small step forward to go, oh, I'll just stay here.
We consequently all our messaging's come out. From NZDA, stay at home.
Yeah.
And to be honest, yep, I agree with that. I think too, like you only know what you know in the bush via a little text screen this big. I think and what you took in and this, like you're saying, this thing developed so fast that that we were trying to remember what we'd read in the media leading up to the event, so and then you sort of put your binoculars back up to your face and you see some bulls on the scrub line and you're like, don't really care COVID in some ways, like, oh, so I'm excited, this is what I'm here for. But no, we did make a beeline out. I mean, by the time we're getting the messaging from the wives, you guys need to come back. We're like, okay, let's start walking out. It's not fair on James to get him to pick us up. If it's been a lockdown, let's just walk out, and that's why we came out early with the walk. So it was it sort of just worked out really well that we got a good hunt in, got some great animals, got back to the wife and the kids, and everybody's safe and healthy, and we can now just sit around in the lockdown and enjoy our memories of the hunt.
Yeah, and you've got work to do. Should it be needed? Yeah, no. Yeah. Going back to those lines of communication from NZDA, they've been, Mountain Safety Council as well, and Game Animal Council have done a really good job at communicating that, hey, as hunters we're resourceful and we, like I say, 6 months out plan these things, but and I think the Coast Guard did a really good job as well of highlighting the stats of rescues that it takes, and that's why we do go out there prepared, because that could be us. And so if you do, ignore the suggestions, and now I see it's in theory illegal, then you are putting not just yourself at risk, which you always voluntarily do, but the people that might need to pluck you out and
need to look after you.
Yeah, and I've said this a couple of times talking to some intensivists before this was all locked down. Now's not a good time to really injure yourself and need critical care, because you just might not make it, and two, you might not be prioritised should you make it to the hospital. So, bear that in mind if you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, getting frustrated. Say, we're actually in a bloody safe place to just sit there,
Yeah, I mean, you're putting yourself in a pretty germ-rich environment too if you have to go to hospital. So.
Yeah, I told the story that I punctured my leg with a knock the other day, and yes, I was not keen to go get stitches. So I think there's going to be some good scars out there at the end of this. So people not keen on getting stitches.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's good. Be responsible. Yep.
Your email address. Do you live on a farm, associated with a farm? What was the story there?
Yeah, so where I live is it's an old ex-sheep station south of Wellington. It was originally 2,500 acres. It was called Long Gully Station, and our family bought it in 1991, 92, and it had pretty much reverted back to scrub when we got it. It had been in the 1987 financial crash. It had been let go.
Right.
And so when we got it, it wasn't really a working farm anymore. It was sort of reverting back, and so we've always sort of run it like a whopping big lifestyle block with a whole lot of recreational uses going on. And then I bought 200 acres off Dad a few years back, and it sort of comprises of a valley and a few ridges, and the valley's full of manuka. So Manuka Valley Farm sounded good to me, so I just called it that. And actually, I wonder if I'd spin you around, you might be able to see it in the window.
Oh, lighting. Here we go. Oh, look at that.
We live out on our house is up the top of we're built in concrete tilt slab, and we're right up on top of the ridge. So I'm up in the Alpine every day when I wake up, and we get to look out over Tuffolk and ridges, and it's really cool as a hunter being able to live on a piece of land.
Were you using a microphone there?
Has it stopped recording?
It's still recording, but it's gone a bit muffled.
Oh, has it gone a bit muffled? Yeah. That's it.
That's better. Yeah, that's better. Nice.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I did hear what you said. It's just gone a little bit muffled, mate.
I was muffled.
Yeah. So you said the Longview? Is that where the Wellington or Lower Hutt branch have a rifle range? Is that right? Or am I incorrect?
No. So that's sort of out of Karangarua Valley. That's where the Wellington branch is. We're sort of south of Wellington, behind Brooklyn, and I've got a rifle range. But it's sort of just for me and the family and the odd friend who comes up. But it's good. The range that the club has access to is really good. So a lot of the members enjoy going to it. So.
And not to give away secrets, but we had Jordan Munn on here in the previous episode, and he was talking to me about the urban deer in Wellington. Do they come through your property?
They may do.
They might do. We'll neither confirm nor deny that.
Yeah. There's certainly not. There's certainly a few deer around, but not in any appreciable numbers that you could go out and get one.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to be able to have some more hunting on our doorstep, but there's simply just not enough public, recreational land around for that to happen, and the will to have deer in it as well. So.
Yeah. No, I was talking to some people in Auckland the other day about a surprising red deer herd close to the city. I won't say where or who or what, but yeah, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Again,
well,
I don't think the numbers are anything noticeable.
Yeah. I think we've got to be responsible at the end of the day and keep it. Illegal releases aren't helping us out as far as our purchase with DOC, as far as being listened to. So keep your illegal releases away from anything deer stalking related, please.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's there's plenty of places and enough deer that they can sometimes be perceived as a problem as it is, so without, like you say, deteriorating some what appears to be now some semi-flourishing relationships, or at least trying to work towards a common goal. So we don't need those things deteriorated, because I'm sure that it's come in waves of frustration and agreement, and right now it appears that through a little bit of loggerheads, some agreements have been beginning to flourish. So like I say, it's no point diminishing all the hard work that's gone into those sort of appreciations and having a seat at the table. Absolutely.
Yep.
Mate, so you said that the Heritage Trust is on Facebook. I see it there on Instagram as well. Is there a website where we can follow along, or just those two spots?
There's a link on the NZDA website. So if you Google NZDA, but most of our work at the moment is going on Facebook. Most of our updates. Once we're in the building and we get those servers, we'll actually create a proper Heritage Trust website where people will be able to go along and see the photos and some of the lists of the records that we have, and just learn more about us. So look out for that in the future. But in the moment, if you want to get in touch with us, for instance, we have people get in touch with us all the time about where they'd like to donate Granddad's old rifle to, or Granddad's old head, or any kind of family memorabilia. So get in touch with us on Facebook, give us a direct message, and we'll get in touch with you.
Nice. Now, mate, you said that you like rifles that are battered and bruised. Tell us about this sporter rifle that you've just been posting on your personal Instagram page with the silver fern on it. What's the deal there, man? It looks beautiful. And you said you like the battered and bruised ones, but this one's beautiful.
That doesn't look too battered and bruised, because that's I'd always had a hankering for I really like Mannlicher rifles, so that's the full stock, with the wood going all the way to the end of the barrel. So that was a CZ 550, and if you've ever picked one of those up, they've got a lot of wood on them, and they've got too much wood on them. And one of them, back in the 50s, they came out and they were extremely svelte, extremely thin, nice to hold, really, and today's ones, I guess they've just added like wood all over it to make it stronger or whatever. But it's a big chunky unit. So what I did is I slimmed the whole thing down, and then I got these guys who do laser cutting, and I decided I wanted the New Zealand fern on the checkering panel, so I got that all laser cut on there. So that was a bit of an experiment to see how that would turn out. And it looks nice. It's come up really nice. I've slimmed down some other rifles I own, so I've got like a Sarko 85 Bavarian. And if you've ever seen one of those things, like through the middle, they're like a piece of 4x2, so I've slimmed all that down. So I took that to Africa, and one of the things I got them to laser cut on that too is just where I went in Africa, the 3 different, places I went to, sort of Jackal's Kraal, Mariko's Drift, and Etherston Game Reserve, and it was quite cool to sort of have those sort of quite cool South African names on the side of the rifle that I took to Africa. So I like my rifles to tell stories, but also to feel right. When you handle thousands of rifles and that's sort of what you're into, you pick up one that's sort of been overstocked or way too much wood put on it, and you're like, that's yuck, I need to change it, so I'm not afraid to start whittling away and slimming things down. The other thing I do is I dabble around with carbon fibre, so my carbon fibre stock most of my backcountry rifles. So the rifle I took to Westland was a Sarko 85, and they're a heavy rifle. So part of it had a laminate stock that weighs a ton, so that's out the window. And, bringing this carbon fibre stock, crafted around it, size it to my length to pull because I'm quite a big guy, and just make it super light. So they're like a 2-layer carbon fibre with a laminate in between to stiffen it up. And I think I'm getting them down to about 550 grams for the stock. So it's pretty light.
Yeah,
and they shoot good. So
absolutely. That's the key part. We not to make anyone jealous, but we went out and put a few rounds down range last night, and nice. It's always good to see how well they go, mate. The hat, and I've seen Gwyn wear one too. Are they available, or is that something special that you guys have?
This is something special. We give them out to select people. You might be able to get yourself one. We have sort of looked at selling them at the next Seek show potentially.
Awesome.
We'll see how they go. They're good quality. They fit nice, and it's quite good really. If you keep them limited, people they'll be more valuable one day.
Yeah, I need to get onto my design's actually quite similar to that with the head. The head is actually on the opposite. The wall that I'm looking at, it's on the other side of the wall. It's my mate's nice. Head that he got out the back of this place, and it's not only is it massive, but it's got this real character that the right hand tine in the skull, so not the pedicle, but in the skull, was broken and healed, and so it's a bit lopsided, and it gives it a bit more width. So it was an added advantage. It was pretty cool. Yeah. Mate, what would you leave people with, Tim? Like an idea to sort of think about, like as a to everybody, not just to hunters. What's something that sort of doesn't do you wrong, or that you probably I also find similarities in day-to-day life to being out in the bush and being out in nature. What do you sort of think sort of shows up in your life constantly? Both hunting and in the real world, if you want to call it that, civilized world.
For me, being so I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian all my life. Big part for me of getting out in the hills is just seeing what God created and connecting with Him on a level that you just can't get in the city. Seeing His majesty and what He's created just blows me away. Like, for instance, a few years back, I was in the Zora Canyon, and you just see this piece of rock just going up for thousands and thousands of meters, and you're you just can't help but be impressed that you're a very small person in the backcountry, just real small, But, for me, it's always been God He's always been there beside me. He cares about me. And, and He created the whole world in my point of view. And for Him to care about someone as small as me and look after me in the backcountry always keeps me grounded. So, yeah, that's what I'd leave with you. Yep.
Mate, that Zora Canyon must be an extremely special place because someone that's documented our hunting history really well, Greg Kygo, on another podcast, on the Australian Hunting and Reap podcast, explained that exact same place in his, again, another person who's a devout Christian, Greg Kygo. That was what he was trying to get across. So it's amazing. I've got plenty of places in New Zealand to go to still, and I must go visit this slab of rock because it's obviously quite spiritual. Yeah, awesome.
Oh, it is. It's cool. Yeah, and I mean Mueller Pass. It's quite cool. Is in the head of the Mai Tais where you look at it from the best angle, in my opinion. and if you look at some of Banwell's books, like there's been some amazing heads shot up in the top end of that Mai Tai, up in the Mueller Pass. So again, you're walking in the footsteps of history. So it's not only cool to see the Zora Canyon, but it's also cool to know that you're in some historic deer stalking country. And it's interesting too, like all through there's still the pronounced deer trails, even though there's not a lot of deer there now. They're pretty much all shot out. But those pronounced deer trails from where they used to travel through, it's that wide, it's that deep, and it's just going all the way along the best part of the hillside. And that's sort of quite neat to see as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. Appreciate it, and stay safe, brother.
Awesome, bro. Thanks for the opportunity.